Yo, what up? Welcome to the Cars and Kicks podcast. I am Jacques Slade, and we got a good show for you guys today. Lots of things have been happening in the world of sneakers, in the world of cars. Lots of stuff is going to happen in the next couple of weeks. So we're really here just to put you up on game. Like if you've been busy with the holidays and you've been eating and now you're working out to try to get rid of the stuff that you were eating and you haven't had time to really lock in, we locked in for you. And so we're going to give you all that information and news that you need for this episode. But before we go any further along, of course, we got to get this started the right way. And I've had this one planted on the inside of my soul for a long time.
Oh.
So y'all ready? And it goes, boom, I hope you're ready. Boom, it's time for the show. Boom, it's Cars and Kicks. Boom, you already know. Boom, it's hope you're ready. Boom, it's time to go. Boom, boom, it's Cars and Kicks. Ready, set, go.
Oh boy,
right, that's
we're
enough.
gonna have to
That's
change
enough.
the
That's
rating of this show. If you guys
That's
are
enough.
watching and not listening, just turn away for
yeah.
for a couple seconds there. Woo, wow.
Sometimes you feel it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you feel it, and it just takes over. It takes over. Anyway, welcome to the Cars and Kicks podcast. I am Jacques Slade. I am 1/3 of the I just broke something. I am 1/3 of the fantastic trio that keeps this show going. I do most of the foolishness around here, but the other two guys, they give you the information that you actually need. I'm just here to make you laugh and to go, what is his mama thinking? So I'm going to keep it moving to my man Erik to give his intro.
Well, we're off to a solid start again. Amazing.
Yes.
I'm Erik Valdez. I am also 1/3 of the Cars and Kicks podcast because 3 of us make 3/3, right? That's how that math works. I'm the car guy here. I know a bit about sneakers. I got sneakers sitting next to me right now. Some pretty cool ones. But we are going to talk about both of those things tonight. Like Jacques said, a lot of news in both of those worlds. And we wouldn't be here. Jacques and I, as you can tell, if it was just the two of us, this show would go nowhere. Nowhere at all. So we have to really give shouts out to the other 1/3 of the show, Nick, for keeping us going. Nick, say hello to the people.
What up, y'all? I am the third third of the thirds. I'm 50% car, 50% sneaker, I think.
I think
you're balanced. You're well balanced.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in there. You know, I probably lean one way or the other depending on the day of the week, but I try to stay in the middle of this 2-part, conversation that we have. So, but yeah, this is going to be a good episode, and I feel like I have a little bit of a Thanksgiving hangover still days later, So I'm glad that
enough.
Jacques is locked in at least. So,
well, as y'all can tell if you're watching, I'm here with the mood lighting because it is very late in Texas. It is also Wednesday, so that makes it Wine Wednesday because it's been a long couple weeks. So y'all don't mind me. I'm just gonna enjoy a glass of red as we do this podcast.
Yeah. This is a very grown man episode of
yes.
Cars and Kicks. This is a very adult episode. Adult as in not in a.
Whoa.
Anyway, let's start with some news. So, Adidas and Jerry Lorenzo, they have not the. I don't want to say they don't have a good relationship because I don't think they have a bad relationship, but they just haven't been winning together. Let's say they're not on the same page. There's a bit of a sibling rivalry happening there. They both want the best for the brand, but they haven't been able to agree on the future of the brand as far as Jerry Lorenzo is involved. But they do have the Fear of God sneaker that is going to be coming out. So this is part 2, the Fear of God basketball sneaker 2, and it's actually coming out relatively soon. It's supposed to be priced at $190, sorry, which is kind of expensive for a basketball shoe, I'll be honest. I like the $180, $150 sneaker, but it is Fear of God, and we know that demands a premium in the market. I just I just don't know if that $190 is a good place to be, considering the reception that the shoe has received and the leaks, so to speak, of the relationship there at Adidas. I think it almost soils the shoe before it even comes out.
You know, I haven't even seen the sneaker yet. I meant to look it up and I haven't had a chance to. But I will say this: we talked a bit about this on the last episode or a couple episodes ago about this Jerry Lorenzo. I'm a big fan of his design wise, etc. But perhaps this tattoo that I mentioned, you know, the 3 stripes on the back of his neck, maybe that's the kiss of death. Like, you know, they always say don't get like your girlfriend or boyfriend's name tattooed on you anywhere,
Right.
because then the relationship just goes south. I don't know, man. Maybe Jerry made a poor decision doing that, because yeah, it's been I guess I don't want to say tumultuous, but it's rocky, right? Like, it's just differences of opinion and stuff, I guess, is the best way of putting it.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about all the fear of God stuff is like I like his designs. I like the style.
Yep.
Same. Yeah.
But I do not feel like it evolves at all. Like, he has a very specific style that is like, yes, it's reinterpreted to have 3 stripes on it, but they don't feel new and exciting each time, right? It's not the new Adidas fear of God, you know, gets people excited. It's like kind of in that same boat as the Nike fear of God stuff. It really is like, you have to spend a ton of money to get this, and it doesn't really, you know, it doesn't stand out enough in a lot of ways, because it is a very like sleek and kind of like almost low-key flex type of thing, right? It's like,
yeah,
it's not something that most people are going to recognize, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that fear of God as a whole probably doesn't sell near as much as like the PacSun fear of God stuff. I forget what it's called.
Stuff.
The essentials,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Essentials, yeah.
And I think there's this like misconception in the market as to like what value he and fear of God bring to the table, because they're trying to sell something to an Adidas price point audience that is not an Adidas price point, right? You know,
Sure.
Right. And I think that's just it's always going to be a conflict, whether he's at Nike, Adidas, he goes someplace else in the future. I feel like until that is like until there's a like realistic conversation about what that price point is and what the quality of the product is and all of that, you're probably going to run into the same issue.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I hear you on the lack of evolution, so to speak, design wise. I've been a fan of kind of his, I guess, high end, laid back, casual, whatever you want to call it, style since the beginning of it all. But to your point, it is interesting for the average consumer, right? Like, a lot of people, Essentials has been a massive hit. Like, that was, you know, at that kind of upper, not definitely not cheap, but not overly expensive, the upper like mid-tier price point, it did very well. You know, people would line up early on for that. It would sell out. Then PacSun started carrying it and they started doing their thing. And then Nordstrom started carrying it and still do. Doesn't quite sell out like it used to. It lost a little bit of luster, but all along there was the actual fear of God line that, you know, was the high end couture level, you know, line of clothes and shoes and everything. But there was never any real, like, I'm very familiar with stuff and I can't really tell you the massive difference in say a pair of sweatpants from the Essentials line and the Fear of God line. Only one of them cost $100 and one of them cost $900. It's like, where's that? I've tried both of them on just to see. There's no way in hell I'm ever spending $900 on a pair of sweatpants. But I don't think there was ever enough separation of that to then go and partner. I think that was part of the problem with Nike, and then going and partnering with Adidas. It's Fear of God. It's not Fear of God Essentials / Adidas, but it's not, you know, you're not selling $800 pairs of sneakers, which in a weird way, I feel like if Adidas really wanted to own that and like lean into that, why not release a super high end, super expensive sneaker? Because people, the general public's perception of value is all marketing, really. So why try to toe the line and release something that's a little more expensive than your average sneaker, but isn't separated enough to justify that? Whereas if you just market it properly and be like, hey, these are hella exclusive, they're $500 a pop, they'd probably sell out. I don't know, just a theory, but I think that's part of it is all marketing.
I wonder if that was like the original plan, and now that there's been so much static and negativity in a sense, negative PR in a sense, that they've lowered the price to 190. Maybe it was a $300 sneaker. Maybe it was a $350 or something like that. And then all of this energy within the last, I don't know, 3 months or so is just, I don't know. It just, I think it needs to evolve. Like I try to think of, like, I think back to like the Jordan 3, 4, and 5, and they all have very similar tooling, almost identical tooling if you really look at it. But the shoes feel completely different. Each shoe feels like its own shoe within its own space and in its own world. Even like the design language feels different. Like it just feels like they're just from different places. If they didn't have Jordan on them, I don't think you would know that they were related unless you're like a sneaker geek and you're like, oh, look at that midsole's the same. Like that has these have the same midsole. And I don't feel like that. I feel like the Fear of God stuff looks similar enough that you know, oh, these are from the same line.
I hear you on that. It's almost like that's something unique to sneakers, I think, because you talk about the lack of evolution in design, right? Well, a lot of people have argued for decades that the Porsche 911 never changes. It's the same silhouette. Yeah, it evolves a little bit, but it looks the same. To the untrained eye or the non-car person, it's looked that way for 60 years or whatever it is at this point, 50 years. But you can't do that in the sneaker world or the clothing world really for too long, or it just seems lazy. So I guess to your point, you can use some of the same tooling and everything, but if it doesn't drastically look different with some of the details, etc., then how do you justify it as being new and fresh and everything,
I think this is like the quintessential, like, I look at this shoe and think, man, that's super dope. I hope it goes on sale. Like that's exactly what I see with each of these designs, because there's a lot of shoes, even at that $200, 190 to something price point, right? Jordan retros are 220 now,
which is insane,
shameful,
which is crazy. Yeah. So like, if people are, you are going to get a much better shoe, but because people are spending more on other shoes, it's probably a harder sell to get them into a shoe like this.
See, it's interesting because, and I don't want to spend all episode on this topic, but going back to like when Yeezy launched, they were what, 220 when Yeezys launched or something like that, which was a decade ago, and your average sneaker was probably in that 120 range. So if you factor in inflation, to your point, Jacques, these probably should have been $300 sneakers at launch, but something internally has happened, and I don't know that this is the right move. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'll have to look them up. I saw some pictures of it early on. I haven't seen what officially released, so I doubt they changed dramatically from kind of the leaks or whatever. But it'll be interesting to see, what the public thinks about all this.
Yeah, I think about like hearing you talk about the Porsche and how like it
Porsche.
evolves.
I'm gonna correct you every
Porsche,
time.
Sorry, Porsche, and how it evolves over time. It kind of reminds. It thinks of it's almost like an Air Jordan 3 and a pair of like Flight 89s. Like how those look so similar to each other. There's not a lot of difference in those, and I think that's what it feels like with. If Tinker would have made like the Jordan 3 and then the Jordan 4 was the Flight 89, people would be like, all right, Tinker, like you done? Like you finished? Like you finished designing? Is this your magnum opus? So, but yeah. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of high price shoes, the folks over at Puma, they are linking up with what's his name? With Porsche. No, is it Porsche?
Yes.
Porsche.
Yeah, it's a perfect segue. We were just talking about Porsche. We're talking about sneakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Andial collection.
Yeah. which is interesting. I mean, let me not be judgy already. They're doing what 300? It's 395 pairs, right?
935 to pay homage to the Porsche 935 race car.
Yeah, I'm just destroying this. The car people are going to be like, Jacques has never driven a car.
Are you sure you're not the one drinking the wine tonight, Jacques?
Yeah, apparently so. They have a black pair and a white pair. I really like the white pair, honestly.
I do too.
I just don't think I'm going to pay $89 for a pair. They look good, but they remind me of just like a regular Puma shoe that costs like $100.
Yeah.
Is this the Porsche tax that I've heard so much about from you guys?
Has to be. I mean, that would be the only thing that makes sense, right, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, you're paying the Porsche, the cool Porsche collector tax, and then you're paying the Porsche design name tax on this. So you're kind of getting double taxed on it, in my opinion.
I mean, it is, to be fair, there's talking about how to value certain things, right? They are limiting the release. 935 pairs of these is not very many sneakers at all. It is also the colorway and the Andial, kind of red, yellow, black colorway on that pays homage to the 935, hence 935 pairs. But that car in Porsche's racing history is iconic. It was nicknamed Moby Dick. And it was a hugely successful car that was campaigned in, what was that, the 70s, I think, and just extremely like eccentric looking and everything like that, which is also kind of strange that they would go with such a subtle classic Puma silhouette instead of doing something crazy with it. That's a whole other topic, but I think it is a little easier, at least for someone like me, and maybe I'm biased because I'm such a car geek and a Porsche fan. It's a little easier to justify $189 price point, which is, to your point, almost double what the normal sneaker would be, because of the exclusivity and the kind of design elements. They look different enough for someone to be like, huh, those are kind of cool. And it's as simple as a color change on the Puma logo on the side. But I feel that almost justifies a higher price point over a label like Fear of God, who, while cool, and Jerry Lorenzo's cool, he's not Porsche. He doesn't have that history. He did not create, the Moby Dick, the iconic race car. So to me, it's almost justifiable in that sense.
I think we're also going to...
Go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think we're also going to see this evolve, like cars and sneakers are, I would say, loosely tied together at best over the past 10 years to get to this point. But I think these types of things will be way more important as more people get into this intersection that we're a part of here and we're talking about, right? Because to Eric's point, there's like the Andial stuff is definitely not, I mean, it's definitely like a top 10 for me, but it's not my absolute favorite when I think of like a Porsche livery.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think about it from hey, there's only 935 of these, and they're probably going to do others to celebrate the other historical moments throughout the years. How cool would it be to have a collection of these Porsche inspired shoes that tie to very specific motorsport moments throughout history?
Yeah.
And to share that, it gets me even more interested in these, even if it's outside of my, price range. And
so for the people that don't know what Andial is,
I love it when Jacques opens a question like this.
Just you guys, I'll let you guys take this. Nick said the livery, was it just was that it? It wasn't I thought it was not a specific model of Porsche.
So Nick, you want to take this?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. So Andial was a company that was founded in the 70s. I want to say it was strictly in the racing world. So they kind of modified. They now have released modified parts for street cars, etc. But I'm trying to think of the best way of describing this here. I guess the iconic livery and the colorway goes back to that one specific car, really, the Moby Dick Porsche 935, which, knowing Nick, he'll probably insert a photo of that once this episode airs here in a little bit, but we'll send it to you on the group chat, Jacques. But they were. I don't know the full history of how it was started. I feel like it was a tuner shop initially in the 70s that ended up gravitating into the racing world and partnering with Porsche Porsche directly, as a manufacturer. So it'd be like, I guess, in modern day terms, like, somebody with a cool little speed shop. Let's use Joe Tech, for example, in the JDM world. Early on, they modified Supras and made really quick Supras, and now they're doing, high-end GTRs and like 2,000 horsepower Lamborghinis and stuff like that. And so it'd be like kind of like that, but a notch above that because they actually ended up partnering with the manufacturer, if that makes sense.
Would this be like the guy that we were talking about last week that does like the really like flamboyant tails on Porsches?
No, RWB.
RWB.
I love how Nakai's son in RWB was just described as doing the flamboyant tails on Porsches. That is amazing.
Well, so what's interesting about Andial is Porsche actually purchased Andial.
Did they? See, I didn't know that.
Like about 10 years ago, I think. So really, this would be like, if let's put it in the sneaker world for a second. So like, if Nike has the Air Max 1 that, let's say Concepts in Boston always does great colorways of that shoe. It's like they did it so well that Nike says, hey, we're going to just buy Concepts because they kill it with this every time.
Got you.
That's kind of how it happened. Eric's point, like it started as like racing. It was kind of motorsport inspired. Then it became like tuner-ish with the Porsche community, and it became just a big deal. But it was really like this livery, this colorway of the car basically is the, kind of pinnacle of all of that, right? That's what, if you say Andial in a car, event setting, this is the car that they picture, is the 935 with this kind of like German inspired, livery on it. So
yeah, and it's this specific colorway. So this is like the Black Cement 3 sort of thing.
Yeah.
Their colorway was the German flag essentially, but they designed that within the livery of the Moby Dick Porsche. I didn't realize that they were purchased by Porsche. That's almost like the AMG story with Mercedes. AMG was a German tuner back in the 90s, 80s and 90s. That now you see AMG badges on every Mercedes out there, even if it isn't an authentic AMG. But yeah, they were purchased eventually by Mercedes, and now Mercedes controls all that, and they've done a whole bunch of badge engineering and other stuff outside of just the performance part of it. But yeah, I didn't realize that, Nick. I learned something today. Amazing.
Well,
is that like, good or bad though?
Depends on how you look at it. I mean, I feel like I don't know the inner workings of, say, the AMG relationship with Mercedes and how much those guys walked away with, like what they paid to buy that. But I imagine it was a healthy sum of money, so they're probably happy with that. And then Mercedes did what they did marketing wise, and sure, to like a purist, they kind of, I don't know, maybe they bastardized the whole AMG thing because early on it was extremely exclusive and stood for performance, hands down. Now, modern AMG cars are literally, it can just be a regular quote unquote Mercedes with like a fancy set of wheels and maybe a different set of side skirts and front bumper or something. So it's not as like iconic. And like my C55, for example, it's a 06. That was the very end of that era of like where AMG engines were hand built. They're still hand built, but where they were kind of hand built and the cars were way more special than like a regular C class, for example. Different suspension, different, brakes, different engine, different this and that, different seats. It was like a complete, almost a bespoke car back then. And mine was at the tail end of that. The earlier cars were even more special. As a matter of fact, now like pre-merger, AMG Mercedes are selling for stupid amounts of money because they become collector pieces at this point in time.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah,
it's also really cool to like have Porsche continuing on that name. You know, like they don't have to keep the Andial name around by any means, you know.
Right.
And, you know, might as well jump a little into this next conversation, but like Artifact, RTFTK on the Nike side of things, right? You know, the whole NFT kind of bubble and the creative kind of output of Artifact that got Nike's attention. You know, we just read that Nike's shutting down Artifact, and you know, that's the other side of these kind of acquisitions that happen. And you know, I kind of lean towards like just being super supportive of the people that ever get that chance. You know, like most people will never get the chance to sell a business to a company the size of Nike or Mercedes or Porsche. And you know, it's kind of like it goes back to the skate shop conversation we had in one of the earliest episodes. You know, like if you're just doing it for the love, then you're never going to grow to that level anyway. And if you're creating a business, then the goal is eventually to sell out and retire and have a relaxed life to you know, enjoy your family and friends and kids and all those things. So you know, there's a lot of, I think to Eric's point, there's a lot of people that feel certain types of ways on all of this. I'm sure there are people that are really into the kind of you know, metaverse aspect of the Nike stuff that they did with Artifact, and you know, even the collectible NFT stuff that they've been doing for the past few years. Like, but to me, like, you know, I think this for me, I kind of expected this to be a thing that would eventually go away, but I do think that a lot of the technology that Artifact brought to the table for Nike to use in virtual settings will still be a huge part of what they do for all of these gaming partnerships moving forward. Maybe not, you know, on the blockchain type of stuff, but there's a lot of potential for all that stuff to be really deeply incorporated into, you know, people, especially as we move into, you know, the you know, I don't know if the Vision Pro is going to be around, but the Meta glasses and all of these things where like people are going to be doing stuff in virtual worlds a lot more. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, that was one of the sad things about the closing down statement. It was just like, oh, Artifact's going to live on in other places and other things at Nike, and it was like, it sounded like Nike was just like ripping them apart and just like putting a piece of it here, a piece of it there. It was like, oh, this is so sad. I feel terrible for these people, but I get it. It happens. It happens all the time. Businesses take over and like, oh, nothing's going to change. It's going to stay exactly like it is. And then 2 years later, like, oh yeah, we're shutting this down. Kind of like Apple with Dark Sky. I mean, they put it into the weather app, but the Dark Sky app, I'm one of those loyalists. Like, I want my Dark Sky app. Anyway, enough about that. Some quick hits real quick. Kobe's Air Force One is coming in the Lakers home colorway, which is pretty exciting to see Nike really investing in Kobe in that way. There's an away pair as well. I'm not sure when that one is going to drop, but the white pair is actually coming on this weekend. So actually it'd be prior to this episode dropping. So if you missed out on those, I think they're limited to 800 pairs or something like that, or 8,000 pairs. So those are going to be pretty hard to get. The Air Jordan 11 Legend Blue in Columbia, that's returning on December 14th. I almost feel like there's a little bit of a Air Jordan 11 fatigue kind of happening. So it'll be interesting to see how these sell. I mean, the Legend Blue colorway, it's a popular colorway, so it could still do well, but it also could not do well, I think. And I think that's a weird kind of place to be in for a sneaker company. Be like, oh, this might be great. This might do gangbusters. But at the same time, these might end up at the outlet. Like, it's one of those rare cases where I just don't know.
Yeah. Especially when that Jordan 11 is you know, the moneymaker for the company every year going into Christmas. I mean, it's definitely an interesting time for Jordan Brand and the whole retro kind of vibe that they have you know, capitalized on for you know, decades now. But would not want to be in those meetings.
What is the price point on that? Those are not cheap either, right?
I imagine they'll be 220.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Let me look. I imagine 220, but it could. 230, which and that makes it even harder. That makes it even harder right now.
Yeah.
At 230, I'm gonna wager that these are gonna be pretty available for people to get. If you want them, I think you'll be able to get them. You're not gonna have to rush or be like, I need to get them on launch day. I don't see that happening. 230 is a tough pill to swallow in today's current sneaker market, especially when it comes to Jordan retros. I mean, before we started the podcast, I was telling them I had a chance to pick up 2 pairs of black cement Jordan 3s. Like, and there's no way that 2018, no way that happened. 2011, when they released, no way that happened.
Right.
But for me to get 2 pairs and it to be like an easy thing, not like, yo, my mans, can you hook me up with 2 pair? You know, your boy trying to get one to rock
and
one to stock. Yeah, I've been doing this Cards and Kicks podcast thing. It was just like, you guys have enough for me to get 2? And he was like, yeah, go ahead.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay.
So did you do it?
Well, all right. Yeah. I got 2 pair because my 2011 pair is dust. It is.
I bet
the soles are literally falling apart. Like, I've had them repaired once.
Yeah.
So now it's time to let them go. It's like, I gotta let them go.
I've got the 18s. It was 18, right? The other release. Yeah. I've got those. There's still nothing's crumbling or anything yet, but like the heel tab's fading. There's signs of aging happening on those for sure. So we'll see. I should have re-upped. I didn't do it. I probably still could. I guess they're not that hard to get.
I imagine you probably could.
Yeah.
It's one of those shoes that I wear more than any other shoe probably, though. You know, like that and my just plain Chucks, you know, like those are the 2 that just I'm always wearing them. So like I usually get 2 pair. Like I've gotten at least 2 pair since a long time ago, and I don't have any of them left. They just eventually get to the point where they're falling apart and crumbling, and it's like, okay, time to move on. But that's also part of why I love the retro stuff coming back. Like I'd rather see people wearing the shoes and wearing through them and buying something new than just sitting, it serves its place. Everybody has their place. And like, I love seeing the comparisons, like the guys in the sneaker community, like Jumpman Bostic and, Marvin, MJO 23 Dan, and all those guys that have Dunks Are Nice. Like, I think those guys have like such a beautiful way to be able to preserve the shoes and like line them up and show like, okay, this is the literal history of this retro product from 94 on. But for me, it's like that shoe in particular, I'm just gonna wear it. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I go through spells. I wear them a lot, and then I won't wear them for a long time, and then I'll wear them a lot again, and then I won't wear them for a long time. Like, I did that. Like when Lost and Founds came out, I probably wore those for like 6 months straight. And just like destroyed them. And then I had to put them away. And then like these 2000, and it's weird because I have a 2018 pair. I'm just too lazy to go to my storage unit and dig for them.
Jeez,
I can relate to that statement. Problems. Yeah, it is, but I can relate to that statement more than anything.
Yeah, but I mean that place is a nightmare. I need to pay somebody to clean it up.
I'm just sad we're not the same size, or I'd be over there cleaning it out for you.
Oh, goodness gracious. Anyway,
man.
But yeah, so those are my quick hits in the sneaker world. I wanted to let's jump into the car stuff a little bit. There was something that caught my attention was, well, I guess it really caught the world's attention, I should say. The Jaguar concept car stuff. This is the thing that makes me...
when you said that is already setting this up to be very interesting. Let's hear the Jacques take. We need some music to enter, like Jacques take.
Jacques takes. So this is the thing that makes me angry about cars. The concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get so excited. It'll be like the auto show or SEMA or something, and they'll be like, "Oh, look at this cool concept car. It has all of this stuff." And it never goes on sale. Mm-hmm. It's just like, why show? Like, why make it? Just make it an image of like, oh, these are some ideas we have, but you actually make the thing, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's what I want, that one. Yeah. But you never get to do it. Like, I don't understand how you guys. I mean, you guys pay way more attention to the car market than me. Like, that has to be frustrating for you guys too. So even like the Jaguar thing, I know all the feelings about the rebrand and the emotion of the logo and all of those things, but like, that car looks kind of cool. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I want that. But I know I'm never going to get that. Yeah. Like, why show me that? It's like vaporware almost.
It's, in a sense, it kind of is, but there's a point to it. So I have kind of a unique perspective on this, because for years and years ago, for a few years, I toured with Ford and Lincoln, actually, and Mercury, when Mercury was still a thing. So I used to tour with Ford Racing, and I was a hype man at like NHRA events and stuff, and like getting the crowd riled up and everything for stuff like that. And then at auto shows, I was the guy up on the turntable, talking about the cars and everything like that for both Lincoln and Mercury, and did a little bit with Ford. But I say lucky enough, because it was really cool to me to introduce a couple of concept cars way back in the day. The Lincoln MKR, which never got made, was one of the coolest concept cars I ever got to really like sit in and check out and everything like that. And I got to kind of not launch that car for them, but I was up when they debuted it, talking to people on the platform back in the day. I think it might have been at the New York Auto Show. I can't remember where it was, but it was a very cool looking car, and some of the tech involved in that was like, actually did make it into production, but the car itself never did. And I guess this is a long-winded way of getting to the answer to your question, Jacques, is a lot of the times car companies will, and they've gotten better at this nowadays. Most modern concept cars are not so far off of what the production model ends up being. It used to be they were just like crazy pipe dream cars that got people excited about the brand, and that was their job. It was kind of an unspoken rule that 90% of concept cars were never going to get made, but they were eye candy at the auto shows, and it was good press hits for the company, and people would be like, whoa, look, this is what Lincoln, for example, is going to be making, and they're back. They're reviving themselves, blah, blah, blah. That car never got made. However, a lot of the design elements, some of the design language, like, for example, I think that was the first car to kind of introduce the new grille style for Lincoln. That type of stuff made it into the production cars. Some of the technology made it into the production cars. So they're an exercise for designers and engineers on one hand, and then they're kind of a halo, marketing tool for the rest of the company on the other hand. That's the whole point behind a concept car. I get your frustration with it, because there's been several throughout the years that I too have like, man, if it looks anything like that when it comes out, I'm getting it. I guess not recently, but kind of recently was the Toyota Supra. I don't know if you guys remember seeing that concept car when it got launched probably a decade ago or something like that. And I'm like, yo, if that car looks like that and has those specs, I will be first in line. And it's still a good car, but it was definitely a letdown from the concept. And to go back to Jag and what they're doing right now, and I want to hear your take on this, because they are, again, I alluded to this on the last episode, but I feel like they're creating a crazy amount of buzz right now, which is doing nothing but good for them, because Jaguar was, for all practical purposes, dead in the water. They weren't selling anything, and they needed to rebrand, and they needed to reinvent, so to speak. Whether or not this is the right approach, whether or not this new logo, whether or not this new concept car ends up making the production or whatever, it's got a lot of people talking about the brand again, so it's working in that regard. But before I go any further, because I talk a lot about this, Nick, I want to hear your point, and then Jacques, I want your take on this car itself. So we're going to get to all that. Nick, you go.
Okay. So I think I 100% agree with Jacques. It's definitely frustrating when this stuff doesn't come to market in the teasers that we see at the auto shows. This particular one, the interesting thing about it is something we talked about on a previous episode about like their rebrand being more of an upscale version of what Jaguar is to the existing world of cars, right? The price point that I saw on this was somewhere around $125,000-$130,000. I think that's like roughly double what most Jaguar cars sell for right now. And the optimist in me saw the 400 and whatever mile range and the 15-minute 200-mile charge and thought, okay, if this even trickles down into a drivable car for the average person, then they're really pushing the envelope with it. So I think it looks cool. It would be something I'd be interested in if it actually came out to look the way that it was with all the specs that I've seen. But to Jacques' point, I've looked at too many of these concept cars over the years and have no expectation for this to come out looking or delivering the stats that and the specs that have been, unveiled with it.
Okay, and let's be perfectly clear here. My bank account can't afford a $127,000 car. Let's just make it
I'm
clear.
just
manifesting.
You got time to make money.
Yeah. Well, we need some sponsor ads here on this show. Yes, that's going to be if we're buying $127,000 cars. But again, this is one of those things. Now, I'm going to give Jaguar a little bit of a pass because they didn't make this car yet. Like, it's all like renderings. So like I feel like I'm okay with that. But if this was like a car that they were like touting around to all like the car publications and the Car and Driver and Racer Mag or whatever those things are, like I would be upset if this car doesn't come to fruition. These are just renderings, so I'm like, okay, this is a sketch. This is Aaron Cooper sketching out the most futuristic shoe that he can create and then seeing what comes of it versus him making the most futuristic shoe and being like, this is the Aaron Cooper 5000 and you're going to be able to fly when you put them on as soon as they release to everybody. This is just a prototype. But this is a render, so I feel like I'm okay with it. And it's very minimal, but I'm okay with it if it comes to market.
Well,
so Erik, this is I'm curious to know what you think about this, because I saw the renderings and thought, okay, well, this is like cool, but super early. Like, I don't know what you're doing rolling this out right now if you're Jaguar, but your point exactly is like they're getting a bunch of great press out of all of this stuff. I just don't think I don't know how they keep it up.
Well, I think, first of all, spoiler alert for Jacques, they have created a concept version of this. It is beyond renderings now. There is a rolling, like, I don't think it's drivable necessarily, but there are actual physical full-scale model concept versions of the Type 00. They just had an event a few days ago in LA, I think. It is now past your rendering phase, so you're gonna have to hold them to this now, right? By your own standards.
I hold them to this, and this is the angry part. This is
where you get angry. So, here's where they get some redemption if it holds true. The Jaguar, press people. I think their actual boss, the CEO, went and spoke about it and said that this is very close to production. That's what he said that there's going to. Now, I'm not going to hold him to that for a handful of reasons, because you start looking at the design elements of this, and we can dissect this car all day long. That would be a whole episode there. Whether you like it or not is subjective. And I think there's cool elements to it. I think it also looks like that 90s Batman cartoon car, which isn't a bad thing. It just looks like a supervillain, well, I guess Batman is a superhero, but it looks like a super villain car to me, which is kind of cool. But you look at some of the angles on this car, and all I think, because I know too much about the car world, is like, well, that's never going to meet crash, that's never going to meet crash ratings. That's not going to, you can't do a front bumper like that. You can't do, it can't be that low. Like, you're never going to see 26-inch wheels, whatever size those things are, because they're gigantic. So you start dissecting and picking apart the elements of the concept that will probably not make it to production. That said, I don't know. This thing may end up never seeing the light of day, and it all may be just for the press right now. And while Jaguar figures out exactly what the F they're going to do. And this is a great, if you think about it, not only are they getting a lot of press out of this, they're also getting a massive free focus group to then check the barometer on where they're going. And if they need to be like, skirt, giddy up U-turn, to use the words of was that Sir Mix-a-Lot? I think so. To do that, then this is now they have that opportunity, because people could see this and be like, wow, that is a gorgeous concept. I love where Jaguar is going, blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like internally, all right, guys, we're on the right path. Or they can hear what they're hearing now and be like, all right, we gotta go back to the drawing board, because this ain't it. So in a weird way, it's just it's kind of a freebie right now, what they're doing. Good. They're getting a lot of press, and they're getting a free focus group out of it. That's the way I'm looking at it. I'm not holding them to anything. Some of the highlights, like you mentioned, Nick, the range, the quick charging and everything, that's not going to be exclusive to Jaguar. I hate to say it, but that's going to be industry wide by the time this thing sees the light of day. So that's not going to be a selling point for this car. That's just going to be expected, at that point. So we'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, the Jaguar is getting some sort of flowers right now at the end of 2024.
Yeah, they're getting a ton of press out of this. Like you can't pay for this type of engagement, honestly. And they have been killing it in that regard. So I mean, in that side of it, kudos to them for pushing the envelope and getting people excited about, or I shouldn't say excited, getting people engaged with their brand and mentioning their brand, because I don't think we would have mentioned Jaguar at any point on this show unless something like crazy happened, outside of like, this Jaguar sold for a blank $1 million or something like that, would have only reason it would have kind of come across our desk. Otherwise, we would have been like, it's not just like a brand like that we speak about, which either says something about us or it says something about Jaguar. And I'm willing to point the finger. So I'm gonna say, but they've done a great job. So kudos to them. For making some waves in the world, both in the car world, and they broke outside of the car world. That's the fantastic part about it.
Yeah.
It's not just car people
all over
that
the
are talking about
blogs
Jaguar
too.
Yep.
Yeah, high fashion, tech blogs, people that design logos, people that make fonts for a living. Like everyone's like, people are like investigating the negative space on the logo and seeing if it's something there. It's pretty fascinating how much of a conversation they've been able to start. Whoever came up with this PR plan, they deserve all of the money that they got for this one, for sure.
Speaking of making waves, I feel like we would be remiss if we did not speak about Kendrick Lamar and GNX.
Yes.
The album.
GNX.
So we don't often talk music on the show, which is kind of, it's not the concept of the show, but we're all really big music heads here. Jacques is the only one showing his talents, on the regular here. But I feel like we could at some point, just start the Cars and Kicks boy band, maybe. That might be 2025, 2026. We'll see. But GNX, man, there's a lot to unpack there. And it is so nice that it just kind of fell into our world because of the title of the album, the art on the cover, because it is titled after the Buick Grand National GNX. And then the Nike shocks that were part of this whole thing. And Nick did an amazing thing and wrote our first newsletter, ladies and gentlemen. So for all of you listening out there, you can subscribe to our newsletter, and we're going to be doing more of this. But Nick wrote a great piece on the album itself and the kind of tie into the Cars and Kicks world. So I'm going to let Nick start this next segment off because he put in all the work.
All right. news.carsxkicks.com. You'll be able to find new articles on there every week going forward, probably more than one a week. At some point we'll get it rolling even faster. But I mean, I'm a huge Kendrick fan. I got to work with him when he was with Reebok. We did a photo shoot with him for, Jacques was there. We filmed in a studio in Santa Monica and brought kids from his high school out and had a whole, and I mean, I was a fan prior to that. I've listened to him since Michael Jordan, like whenever that was in like 2008 or 7 or something like that. But I think this album, really is like a fascinating kind of like poignant moment for hip hop, for just culture in general. I feel like we've been doing this show and we've been getting a lot of great feedback from all of you out there. And it's been amazing to have people come up and say, man, I love both of these things. And have people come up and say, I had no idea about the car side, or I had no idea about the kick side. But then to have Kendrick do his thing and have, like the visuals for his first video, even wearing those all blue Nike Shox R4s, I just couldn't not talk about it. And we've been talking about doing a newsletter or a blog of sorts for quite a while since we started the show. And I thought, all right, I just got to jump into this because I haven't stopped listening to the album since it came out. And every time I listen to it, there's some new thing. And it really kind of put me back into digging into the stats on the GNX. Like I kind of forgot just how much of a like an FU to the standards of what GM was doing at the time that car was. And not even just the way that they came out with it, but like it was expensive. I forgot all of those things about it because, like I've been a big fan of it, but I just, you move away and it's like, oh, it's just one of those bucket list cars. I'll put it up on the list on the wall and hopefully get one day. And to go back and kind of relive that. And then to think about like the Nike Shox, a very, kind of parallel to the the design aspect of the shoe. It was polarizing. It was like, people are like, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? And that is kind of like the beauty of those two things coming together on this, with him. And he wore the Shox at his show 3 months ago, whenever that was. And it's just kind of been like this underlying talking point. And I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. So I hope we see more of that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of opportunities for companies to, or for artists to, kind of connect those dots. It's like we all have those important things. We talk about it on this show, and we connect with people that share similar relationships with cars or with sneakers. And to have somebody at that level, who's reaching the masses, connect those is like really a cool kind of parallel for us in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of those things where like I love the car, obviously love the shoes, I love the music, and it's like bringing those three worlds together in this way is perfect. And it really, like, this show is like the perfect place to identify that. I think people that listen to this show, that's something that they would notice. It's not. Not a lot of people are going to be like, oh, the Grand National's super crazy, or the Shox are super crazy, or the music is super crazy. But like we have all three of those. Like we're in a world that exists. Like the Venn diagram, the center of that Venn diagram kind of exists with us, which I feel like Kendrick is pretty cool.
Wouldn't have done the record if it weren't for our show. Really, I think we inspired him to bring it all together. No, but talking about, we're talking about marketing, genius and this and that and what Jag's doing. On the complete flip side of things, there was no marketing. There was no promotion. There was nothing. This was just, it's almost like somebody dropping a mixtape. And mind you, it's Kendrick Lamar. It's not a nobody. So you have the luxury of doing something like that. But man, there are so many layers to this. And I think what kind of, going back to what you were saying, Jacques, about how this ties into our show and everything like that is, yes, it's the cars and the kicks on the surface, but the storytelling is what we really gravitate towards, all three of us. That's what we love behind. It's not about, oh, you own a cool car, that's awesome. It's like, why do you own a cool car? Why do you own this pair of sneakers, that pair of sneakers? And we've had a few guests on, some amazing guests, and we're going to have more in the new year for sure. But getting the stories behind why people make these choices, etc. And when you start to unpack the kind of storytelling that Kendrick has put into this, it's really pretty genius, for lack of a better term. Like, going back to talking about not doing double entendres anymore, and there are so many layers of why do you name the album GNX? What is a GNX? Oh, it's not just a Grand National. It's one of 547 Grand Nationals produced. It was produced in the year that Kendrick was born. It was the last of its kind, considered one of the all-time greats. Like, there's so many different layers that go into that, and then like the shocks themselves. Even the name of the shoe, it's like it's shocking to do certain things like this, and the timing of all this leading up to him, headlining the Super Bowl a couple months from now. I mean, this guy's doing something pretty amazing at the moment, and like you, Nick, and Jacques too. I think I first heard of Kendrick. Probably the first time I ever heard him was on the Games album when he did the hook for The City, I think it was. And at the end of that song, he had that freestyle that just went off. And at the time, I remember this vividly, and I don't know if he'll remember the story or not, but I was doing very small role, but I was doing a show called New Girl. And I heard that, and Lamorne Morris and I were talking about music. He's big into hip hop and music and everything like that. And I had heard that, and I was like, yo, you got to listen to this guy, Kendrick Lamar, that's on the end of this record. And we were on set one day. I think we were filming in like somewhere, in Griffith Park or something like that. And I remember vividly, I was listening to that in my trailer, and then we started talking about it. And that was the very first time I heard this guy. And there's not often, because I listen to a lot of music from all different genres. Not often does someone that I've never heard of resonate to the point where I feel like I got to start sharing that with people immediately.
Yeah.
And so from the beginning, I knew there was something special about this guy, and just watching his journey and where he's at now. And that, I mean, this was a long time ago, and it feels like he's just, the momentum is still just continuously building. And I don't know, it's just a true testament to storytelling and creativity and all of these things. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff I love about not just the music itself, but everything behind this album.
Yeah, it's quite an achievement to be able to do something like that. I think we all respect his artistry and the craftsmanship that he puts into his work, and I think that's what makes it resonate with us so well.
Yeah.
And last story, you mentioned this, Erik.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna let you lead with it about the Ford Mustang GTD.
Yes,
because I feel like I would just bastardize this story, and everybody that's listening that really loves cars would be like, why would they let Jacques lead that? So we should have
just given you that talking point and seen what you did with it. Just let you roll with it.
Yeah, it'd have been terrible. Terrible.
No, that is it's a great way to kind of end the show, because I think this episode is going to air the Monday before this announcement, so to speak. So Jim Farley teased this earlier this week. And if for those of you that are car people, you're going to understand this. All the sneakerheads listening that aren't quite, haven't fully dived into the car world, we'll explain a little bit of this to you. But they've announced that on December 10th, they're going to be, I guess, debuting the video of the Mustang GTD at the Nürburgring, and subsequently announcing its lap time. And for those of you that are car people, this goes without saying, but everybody else, we were talking about this off air before we went on with the show. The Nürburgring is like the benchmark for performance cars. It has been for a long time. So anytime some sort of performance-oriented car comes out, that is like what gearheads and car people go to, is like, all right, well, how quick is it around the ring, right? So for Ford to kind of tease this and announce, a date leading up to, it sounds really insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Oh, you've got a whole, tease and a date to tell us how quick your car went around a racetrack. Awesome. But the significance of that is huge. And so there's a lot of people really expecting big things out of this, because Ford has put so much money and time into the development of this. And it really, at the end of the day, okay, so you're, a few tenths quicker than some other car. It's not solving the world's problems. But if you're a car person, that becomes a huge talking point. And if you're somebody who's on that list to buy a GTD, it becomes the bragging point for you at every Cars and Coffee, if you're amongst a whole bunch of Porsche people and you can say that your car is quicker than them. So kind of big news, and it'll be interesting to see how well it does. I personally have pretty high expectations for it. Just knowing the technology and the development that went into it, and being really familiar with Nürburgring lap times, etc. So it's interesting and exciting. And I know Nick is probably as equally geeked out and excited as me for something like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's to your point, it's rare that it's teased like this. So if it's not something incredible, it's going to be huge disappointment for people that follow that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
You know, like I think I don't know what the time is, but like I'm pretty sure the Porsche 919 is still the fastest at Nürburgring
of all cars.
Of all cars. But you know, like this is not like a you know, like a Laguna Seca where the whole course is 2 miles, right? I forget the length of Nürburgring. It's like 12 or 13 miles,
something
right?
like that. Yeah.
So like it's a serious kind of testing ground. Which kind of, if you were going to kind of prove your point and say, hey, you know, we are the best at this in any capacity, you know, categorically or otherwise, it's where you do it. You know, the only other place that matters more than this is Le Mans. So, you know, if you can race in Le Mans and win, that's about as good as you can get when it comes to racing. And if you're going to just go based on times, and Nürburgring is the standard. So it's going to be really interesting. I don't know. I mean, you know, like I wouldn't be one that normally, you know, follows something like this just because you wouldn't see it and just pop up and you'd be like, oh, cool, I'll watch the lap. But now I actually want to watch it when it you know, whenever that link gets published. So
right.
Yeah. So okay, I got two things here. So this is kind of like, this will be on the marketing materials. If they drove the fastest time, Ford will be like, this will be like on their like bullet points of talking points for this car.
Yes.
And then the second thing though is like, isn't it heavily dependent on the driver for these times?
So there's a ton of things that factor into this. The driver is key, and there's a reason, like, you know, you won't often see big name, quote unquote big name, like Max Verstappen's not going to go, you know, try to set the record. Lewis Hamilton's not going to be out there. It is always iconic and legendary race car drivers that are setting these lap times, but a lot of them are retired, or they're active, but they're not necessarily household names. They're big names within the car community in the racing world, but not necessarily household names. And part of that is by design. Either they've been involved with Ford as a factory driver for years, or they've, you know, proven themselves in other ways, shapes, and forms. Because the reality is, look, and you've seen this lately with Lewis Hamilton, the quickest qualifiers are not always the best race car drivers, and vice versa. So there will be people that are notoriously mediocre at qualifying, but their racecraft and their ability to control a race makes them, you know, champions. And in this case, this is essentially qualifying lap. You're not out there with any other cars. You're not contending. You're not trying to, you know, manage tires or fuel or anything. This is literally as a flat out lap, as quick as you can go. And some of the world's best race car drivers are not the best qualifiers. So they kind of selectively choose drivers for this specific reason, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, you're also factoring in weather and certain conditions, right? So like, obviously if it's raining, you're not going to go out there and do it. But if it's excessively hot or excessively cold, that factors into it. So a lot of the times these manufacturers will really pay attention to this stuff and try to find the best day, the best time of day, the best driver, etc., to go out and do this. And they won't do it it's not like they just go out on a whim and do it. They've been testing for, you know, months, if not years at this point.
Yeah.
So they know more or less what the benchmark is, and they know what the conditions need to be in order to theoretically set the quickest lap. So that's what they'll aim for.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And in this regard, you know, I guess, Nick, I'll let you go ahead in a second. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like, again, talking about the different cars and lap times and everything like that. And I want to get your take on this, Nick, and yours, Jacques, even though this isn't your world, but like a car like this, I would say it's not going to go out there and set the production car record. I don't think. If it does, it'll be mind-blowing, because right now that's held by the Mercedes-AMG 1, which is loosely a production car. But that did it at a time of, I just pulled it up here, so I don't get it wrong, 6 minutes, 29.09 seconds. All right. That doesn't mean anything to you without any context. But I think that the benchmark for the Mustang GTD is probably 992 GT3 RS. That would be what I would put it up against. And so in that regard, that car, and this will tell you the significance of this right there, that car currently, I think it was 6 minutes, 44 point something seconds. I had that pulled up, but I, for some reason, lost the screen. So it's like 6 minutes, 44 seconds. So you look at that, the delta on that, you're talking 15 seconds slower for a GT3 RS, which is, for all practical purposes, an incredible overkill production car. Tons of active aero, etc. That tells you how much crazier that Mercedes AMG 1 is. It's got a Formula 1 drivetrain. It's got even crazier aero, etc. But 15 seconds, even though it's, you know, a 12-mile track or whatever, that is significant. So I don't expect to see the GTD at the top of this list, but I would venture to say if they're hyping it this much, it's probably going to come in that 642, 643 range. That would be my guess.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And that's a feather in the cap for Ford too, I imagine.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If they can beat a GT3, that's serious bragging rights.
Yeah.
You know? I think that the other thing to keep in mind too, like Jacques, to the point of like how many variables there are, you know, we think of race car drivers and we usually think of Formula 1 because they're the most famous, but there are it's kind of like playing Gran Turismo, right? You play Gran Turismo with a friend that races the same track every time and they whoop you every single time on that track. So there's probably a lot of drivers that are very tuned into Nürburgring and they would be the choice over some of these other drivers that might have, you know, a bigger name or even a better skill set, you know, around the world. But I think, you know, it'll be interesting to see what comes from it. I think it's an exciting moment, you know, whether they do something crazy or not. Like, they've created a little bit of buzz with it, and hopefully, you know, people pay attention, because I think this is something that, you know, could benefit the automotive world on a much larger scale if people paid more attention to these moments, because it is really exciting to think about how close these cars really are competitively, even though they're such drastically different cars. You know, like, if you just look at the GTD and you know, the GT3 Porsche, I mean, it's crazy to think that they're so similar on a track like that, and yet I look at the cars and just think they could not be more different.
Yeah, I don't think anybody looks at a Mustang and a Porsche in the same way.
Right. They, from a production car standpoint, there's not a lot of cross shopping there. This is an exception with this particular car, and it is you know, it is as close to their race car version as possible. And I know we've talked a lot this episode. It's gone a bit long, but I do want to end on talking about race car drivers and stuff. By the time this airs, we don't know the results yet, but just a moment, just kind of pour out a little wine, liquor, whatever, for a moment in motorsports history. By the time you listen to this, Lewis Hamilton will have completed his final race with Mercedes, which is massive. There's no other way of saying it. He has spent the bulk of his career as a development driver with McLaren early on, and then started Formula 1 and Mercedes-powered McLarens, and has gone on to win, you know, one of his championships with a Mercedes powertrain and a McLaren, and then 6 world championships with Mercedes proper. He has broken record after record, and it's been an amazing thing to watch from a fan perspective. I'm excited for the new chapter with him moving to Ferrari, but it's always, I don't know, it's tough to kind of see a certain chapter close to make room for that next one. And so I don't know that Lewis Hamilton listens to this show, but shouts out to Lewis for an illustrious career with Mercedes. That's, I mean, there's we can't talk enough about how impactful that whole relationship has been, and what it's made him as a person, how impactful he has become off track as well. So that's a huge thing in the motorsports world right now that I had to get out there.
Yep. Yeah. Shout out to Sir Lewis. It kind of feels like seeing Jordan play for the Wizards or Patrick Ewing play for like the Seattle Supersonics. It's just like, it just feels weird
a little bit
to see. It'll be weird to see him next year driving a different car and in different even the color, like just seeing him in different colors. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I hope he actually does well. I think that's the thing, that the defining factor in all of these end of year things, right? It's like,
he deserves a bit of a fairy tale ending. Just
agreed.
With some of the stuff that he's had to go through, and arguably an 8th world championship being ripped from his grasp. I really and truly hope that by the time y'all are listening to this, the result is a good one, because he deserves to go out on a high note.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a good one. It's been a long one. We've had a lot to talk about. We have more to talk about, which means we will be back again very soon with another podcast. But I'm going to let Jacques outro us, because he's better than me at this.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you. Make sure you do all the things, and by all the things, I mean give us great reviews.
Yes.
And by great reviews, I mean give us 5 stars.
Yes.
And by 5 stars, I mean only 5 stars and nothing else. If you're watching on the YouTubes or any of those other places, make sure you leave us a nice comment, or if you have questions for us, or if we said something wrong, feel free to correct us, and maybe we'll go through those comments, and we'll do annotations to the next episode to let you know that you were right and we were wrong. It sounds a very personal thing that I'm expressing right now, but it's not. This is just a general thing that I'm saying for anyone to listen to. But either way, we appreciate you guys. Make sure you follow us all over the places. It's Cars and Kicks. Check out the newsletter. We've got some good stuff coming to the newsletter. I'm really excited about that, because we really get to go into a little bit more depth than we do here on the show. So if you haven't, it's news.carsandkicks.com. Check it out. You can subscribe. That way you get notified whenever a new newsletter comes out and all of that stuff. And then we get all your information. And eventually down the line, we're just going to sell you stuff.
Because,
I got to buy a $127,000 car, people.
There you go.
I'm not going to be able to do that on the salary that I currently have. So with that being said, we appreciate you guys for listening. And I'll throw it to Nick, because he'll sign us off and get us out of here.
Yeah. News.carsxkicks.com, CarsXKicks Show on Instagram, carsxkicks.com for the links to everywhere, all your favorite podcast app. We appreciate y'all. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.